thank you for joining us for our panel where we're going to look at how we can empower your workforce through AI agents. I think from the discussions that we've heard today, we see that the insurance industry is undergoing a massive transformation. And together this panel, I think we'll be looking at seeing how, AI in particular, and specifically agents automating tasks that typically were things that were done by people in the past. Some of the key themes we're going to be exploring in this conversation include the AI's role in workforce transformation, balancing automation and human expertise. We're also going to be looking at how AI is shaping talent acquisition and leadership development, managing AI adoption effectively, ensuring employees embrace AI instead of fearing it, and also governance and ethics, especially in AI-driven workforce management, really looking at how to strike the right balance in the way that this is actually deployed. So I'll turn over to our panel looking at probably the first theme, which is going to be about AI workforce and transformation. And I think the main thing is that AI and automation are redefining workplace roles and how organizations can balance these with human expertise. And I think I'll start off with Charles Washika, the CIO of the year 2023. I was there when it happened. Congratulations again. And from a technology perspective, what are the biggest AI-driven changes you've seen in workforce automation, and how do organizations strike a balance between AI-powered efficiency and the need for human decision-making?
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Moses, and thank you everyone for having me here, especially being in an InsurTech event, coming from the banking industry. But I think we all do the same things, and happy to see a few of my friends here. I think Jack did a fantastic job, and also Hapisu, in introducing what we're going to discuss today. So what we've seen, conversational AI agents and virtual assistants. Those are some of the things that, okay, I'll go through a number, and I think, let me just double back a little bit. We do realize that AI is not going to replace anybody's job. Really, it's about augmentation. So conversational AI and virtual assistants, if you see in our contact centers, in the past people used to call and somebody had to answer questions, but now we're seeing conversational AI, the chatbots answering those questions. The other thing is what we call intelligent process automation. And I'll give an example from my industry, fraud detection and transaction monitoring. In the past, this would be people looking at transactions and trying to find out where the problems are. And we did automate that a bit, but now we see AI making that more intelligent. So instead of just understanding transaction trends and saying this is something wrong here, it learns those transactions and helps you to make decisions. We also see what you call augmented decision making. For example, in banking, I think most of you have seen, most banks are doing e-credit. Yeah, so augmented decision making, you do credit scoring using AI, but there's a person who helps, it helps you make decisions instead of, doing the entire decision making. So it really is augmenting the people who do make decisions, even at management level. So you could have an AI model that actually does scoring and you're able to give out loans, but as it learns your data, it helps you to make decisions about maybe the next model that you'll do. And then, of course, the most popular one, which is generative AI. A lot of people now use generative AI to do reports, make images, even in music, come up with music, etc. So those are some of the things that we've seen in the recent past help us in AI.
Well, thank you so much, Charles. I'll come to you. Should I call you Gitch? Yep. Yeah, I think that's what we were using the other day, Gitch. Yeah. From your perspective, working at Career Connections, where of course you work with talent solutions, how is AI transforming workforce structures in hiring and team dynamics? And also, are we moving towards AI-assisted leadership in organizations? What are you seeing in the marketplace?
Thank you for that question. I think AI is redefining a lot when it comes to the full cycle talent management, But your question is around hiring and leadership development. So an interesting statistic, right now, using the latest powered AI models on LinkedIn, it takes you less than 5 minutes to find and identify a candidate. Now, that used to take a very long time for those who are involved in recruitment. And what that effectively means is recruiters can save up to 20% of their work week. That's a whole day in 1 week. And therefore, that means that they can be able to transfer that skill to somewhere where they can start saving life. It also means that on the other end, it's becoming very, very difficult to know, are you really dealing with a candidate online? If you receive a CV, how sure are you that it was actually written by a person on the other end and that they actually use that generative AI? So it also, again, creates that difficulty on the other end. But I think the important thing here is this time that has been saved can be transferred to do much better things, in this case in hiring, but also insurance and anywhere else where you're deploying AI agents, so that people can actually move from saving PDFs to saving lives and to making an impact out there and letting the AI do that which it can do best. I like your point on leadership in terms of how it's helping to be able to redefine and work alongside a leader as an assistant. And I like the point that was mentioned earlier, that it's not coming to replace, but rather it's coming to enhance your role as a leader. Right now, I'm supposed to be in a meeting, but I couldn't because I'm here. I literally just send my AI note taker to be able to represent me in that meeting. And when I'm done, all I'm going to get is, what do I need to do? So if you're to apply this to AI enhanced kind of leadership, then it means that leaders can be able to utilize their time and optimize where they want to spend their time, as opposed to being stretched and pulled in all sides, and using, therefore, their resources, their brains, and where they can make an impact by choosing what they want to do. But you mentioned something about evaluation and how we make this decision. Certainly for me, and the place where I play in when it comes to assessments, in as much as you want the AI to do a lot of this work, there is a limitation, there is an ethical guideline. So for example, you can't really let an AI make a hiring decision. You can't really let an AI make an interpretation of a psychometric measure because it's that ethical guideline. And I guess that's where we speak to what then can we be able to retain so that a human being can be able to make that interpretation using the work and the output that has been done by the AI.
I have a question for you, Gitch.
Yeah.
So, as somebody who runs a business and has people, I now get CVs where I see, I call it ChatGPT fingerprints,
Yeah.
Words like thrilled, underscored, words that maybe were common in the development space previously, but suddenly you see it on a CV and you're like, red flag, this looks like a CV that came from ChatGPT. So how are you, I mean, you're working in recruitment and all,
Yeah.
how are you dealing with that? Do you have tools to flag these things? Does the scoring change when it's fairly evident that the thing that you got is clearly, AI based or had some AI used on it?
Yeah, that's a great question. Last week, I had a client from Dubai, and they were insisting that we need to emphasize that people should not use AI when they're making the application and they're drafting their CV. And exactly that's your question, because then he asked, how do we really know who's worked on this output? So the short answer is, yes, you can come with complication of trying to create another AI to identify another AI. But then the question becomes, is that really where you want to spend that time on? I mean, a case in point, just to deviate a little bit, ChatGPT came and the first person it's almost fired is a CEO. And right now we have DeepSeek that's almost firing ChatGPT, and subscriptions are going down. So there's that challenge of maneuvering it. But then what it does is it allows us to be able to look at what was the primary reason as to why we are looking at these CVs, at these applications. It's because we wanted to understand the human on the other end. So therefore it allows us to be creative in terms of what else should you look at therefore. So for example, could you start by verifying whether the person you're dealing with is actually a human being? Before even the CV, is it a human being who sent you that email, or is it another bot on the other side? So I think it then boils down to, could you be able to deploy tools that can be able to ask that which an AI cannot respond to? By, for example, verifying the identity, verifying their location, and looking at who else they are connected to. And using the AI to be able to sift through all that, not to make a decision, but to allow you to be able to narrow down to a pool that then you can directly reach out to. And connected to that, actually, it enhances that relationship with a human being so that you don't feel like you're speaking to a wall that you send a CV to.
Okay. I'd like to come to you, George. Thank you so much for your presentation earlier. And again, I'd like to come back to you from looking at your consulting experience at Deloitte, and the challenges that you see your clients having when it comes to integrating into the AI into their workforce. So how do you ensure that they actually able to use AI to enhance but not replace human talent? Because I think that's the biggest fear that many people in leadership and also the workforce think about when you start talking about the AI conversation.
Thank you. And I think I just want to pick up from the presentation. You saw the appetite around leaders and managers really saying that that connection between workers and technology, up to 93% saying that yes, it is, it must happen, etc. But you noticed when we looked at the same survey around the readiness of organization, only 30% of the organizations are ready. And interesting, if you drill down the reasons for that, you tend to find one of it is actually to do with the leadership themselves. Leadership themselves not being ready, not having a clear AI strategy and governance structures to support that. Some of the reasons probably why you find those challenges. And what you tend to do is that beginning to refocusing the leadership around creating alignment, buy-in, ensuring that there is a good sponsorship at the top becomes very critical in such a situation. And the low score explained about the readiness is basically fear from employees, mostly around that their job is going to be taken by technology and they're going to be displaced. And that fear is actually real. And unless we deal with that around setting up change management programs that support that transition, will not succeed. And this would be to do with ensuring that there is a transparent communication and also continuous learning to get employees to continuously upskill themselves in the area of AI so that the job is not lost. You also noted on the survey that the augmenting between automation and technology is becoming very important, and with even up to 61% of the respondents saying that they would like to see more of that augmenting of technology and workforce to happen as a way forward, showing the view that jobs are actually going nowhere. Is how I think there's something they use, that they want to use technology to make people to come, they're using the word better, to become better version of themselves, meaning that it's quite there to stay. The issues on sometimes applying AI into systems which really don't compatible also is quite something which is quite notable. And I mean, you see most organizations are moving to agile just to be able to deal with that issue of integrating AI and the existing system so that they work in a much more collaborative way. Yeah, so more focus around augmentation, optimizing human AI roles would be some of the things we want to see going forward to improve that area.
So I want to just sort of maybe tag on to what you just shared, which is my own experience in what I've seen in the workplace. Whilst we may not have seen jobs lost yet, I think what we're seeing is less recruitment. And I think with the augmentation, like I always like to use the most basic example, I think that you pointed out, Gitch, which is, we used to have our status meetings in our company, you'd have the note taker, which was a human who in the meeting would be designated to take notes from the meeting and then circulate after the meeting. Now what tends to happen in our meetings is the note takers, the AI note takers arrive before us. They arrive in the meeting before all of us, and then Moses' AI and Giche's AI, and then the meeting is done, and then literally 5 minutes after the meeting, the notes are circulated, as it were. So I'm just wondering, from your perspective, would you say that whilst we've not seen jobs lost, maybe we've not seen jobs created, meaning that organizations feel less inclined to hire more people because of these augmented people in the organization using AI?
Yeah, also, when I started, there was a global slide when I talked about the global workforce. You saw around the prediction which was made at the recent conference where they were looking at the workforce actually going down and up, and also starts producing, which are produced, talking about 43% of the workforce will need retooling. and reskilling, meaning that they are there and people are more looking around. The future of jobs of work is basically around how people will be retooled and reskilled to do their jobs in a much more efficient way. Yes, the number of jobs coming up may be seen as reducing, but it's just that there are different kind of jobs which are going to come in future. You've seen, for example, the chatbots, which you see dealing with your at the customer service. Some even training chatbots to deal with in a customer care center, talking even close to your language. It takes 6 to 7 months to train those chatbots too. So those are the kind of jobs which are coming up. So the jobs are increasing, but they're just of different type of jobs which are coming up.
Okay, great. So I'd like to shift gears and let's talk a little bit about talent and skills for the AI era, which I think speaks into what you just said, that we're going to have these new kinds of jobs coming to the market. And to you, Charles, I'd like to ask, how are AI-driven insights shaping how organizations upskill their employees, and what skills do you see as most critical for AI-powered workforces?
Okay, just to jump in from where he stopped, I wish I was reducing my workforce. But what I'm saying is we are hiring more, and that's a reality. Because if you just look at it from a customer perspective, and I'll use Jack's example, the demands of the current customer keep shifting so fast that you cannot keep up using old ways of doing things. And the new ways of doing things clearly is now using AI as an example. So the demands are increasing, and I'll give an example. We recently rolled out a youth banking app, significantly different from the one we have. The demands there are so different because of the demographic. These guys want the app to keep changing every single day. So do I keep hiring developers, which I'm doing, but now I'm augmenting those developers with AI, using Copilot, because we have to keep on churning out features every single day. That's just the reality. Now, I know this room has got quite a number of people who are technology people. If you may just raise your hand up. People from technology? Because it's InsurTech. Yeah, so AI insights in how they shape our hiring strategy. First of all, the tech people need to work very closely with HR in as far as what kind of skills are required now, what kind of people are you hiring, that's the number one thing, and assuring the people who are already there that, okay, no, your jobs are not going to be lost. However, the kind of people you're hiring or the kind of skills that you're going to give you are going to help you work better with these new agents or develop new agents that are coming, which are the AI agents. And number two is also using AI to scan your environment and your organization and to see the kind of training programs that are supposed to be there based on the business that you're doing. Again, I'll give an example. If you are rolling out a new insurance product and you realize that the kind of skills you already have need to be enhanced, okay? You can use AI insights to say, okay, this type of training is required instead of Gicheha, in the past, we used to have a needs assessment, which is done at the end of the year, or which is still being done in my organization. But what we've changed to is using AI to get insights on the kind of trainings that are supposed to be pushed out there. And there are quite a number of other things, but maybe I could just say those.
I think we'll come back to you for some specifics around that. Gitch, coming back to you, what are the new skills and competencies that HR leaders must focus on when hiring in an AI-first environment? And how do organizations train existing employees for AI-driven workplaces? And I think this is interesting because part of this conference's core agenda is looking at not just the typical AI, but rather the agentic aspect where your coworker is now essentially an AI. So how should they do this? Because to some extent it might seem somewhat competitive, right? But how are you dealing with that within your organization?
So you've just kicked on my point on skills gap. I'm going to take it off from my notes.
Okay.
But I think George has said it in a way that we are clear that we need upskilling. In my recruitments that I've done for the last 10 years, I can count the number of roles where I have had to ask people for certificates, right? So unless it's a government or it's a highly regulated and you require a particular certification. So we are really moving away from that. And we know other organizations such as Google, for example, that hasn't been happening. You know, they focus on what you're able to do. So let me borrow from World Economic Forum 2025 report, which is a report that I keenly follow. And what is clear from that is, yes, people need to upskill, but in what? It's going to be in one of the following areas. The top areas being the cognitive aspect, self-efficacy, and management, right? Some of the areas where we specialize in as far as assessing and evaluating that is concerned. But what is interesting is AI and big data also have been coming up and rising. I mean, that report from 2022 to now, AI and big data is actually the top six. So it shows you that that's where we need to be focusing on. But even then, those are very broad clusters. So you want to look at things like analytical thinking. And I think, in a way, George, you also talked about it and alluded it to your 2023 report, right? So analytical thinking, resilience, it makes sense why resilience is important, and leadership and social influence. And under that, then you have the technical AI and AI literacy. But what is interesting is, in as much as we are seeing this evolution of the skills that can cut across industries, a lot of them have to do with a human, a person, not necessarily the technology. We've just seen Google AI Studio here, which is very interesting because I asked it to help me conduct some people analytic services for my own data set that I had created, and I acted as if I didn't know it, and really knew where to go to. It really knew what data to pull out, where the code had an issue, and therefore it acted as a tutor. So I think for HR industries, even as we bring these new solutions, I think the question is, what is the role of tutorials? Do you really need those tutorials right now? Or do you need someone who can be able to think on their feet, be analytical, and be able to make that decision? So I think that therefore goes to look at those upskilling programs. I like to appoint on cross-collaboration kind of teams where you can bring the tech team and the HR team and other team and bring them in sort of a sandbox where they can be able to co-create, they can be able to beta test, they can be able to learn from each other. In the process, you're getting the buy-in in as much as the team is learning about that. And really coming up with enhanced career pathways. So we are really talking about, can you have a CFO or whoever it is who is enhanced by an AI, and really looking at that job role and the position and understanding what part of this can be automated, and taking that out and really enhancing that offering and ensuring that you have someone who can be able to be agile, someone who can be able to think and reason with people and be able to bring the best out of others.
Okay, great. So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is let the workforce focus on the strategic, engaging components of the work.
100%. I mean, right now, it's one of the areas where we know that agency is not there yet as far as being sentient beings, and therefore there's a role for me to know how you're feeling. There's a room for me to find out if my email found you well, actually in person, as opposed to doing it via desktop, which an AI can do.
Okay, good stuff. George, I'd like to come back to you. Again, from a strategic consulting perspective, how do you think companies should design AI-focused training and learning development programs, and what lessons can insurers learn from other industries that have done so successfully?
Yeah, so two things which come up in terms of just alignment of the AI agenda to the strategy. So ensuring that the learning and development is aligned to the AI roadmap. That's a very big mistake. Most of the time, our HR people, who are my colleagues, focus more around what's coming up from the appraisal, and people are recording the courses they want to go next year. But they also need to take a pit stop and looking at, in terms of where the organization is going on an AI roadmap, what are some of the things which are likely to happen, and how can the employees be prepared for those skills? And then secondly, future skills, more focusing future skills in terms of just dealing with immediate tool training, you know. So that is key around just ensuring that strategically that is. So what are some of the critical skills which are important in an organization which is desiring to go into sort of AI sort of environment? So a couple of them. So data literacy is key. Is key in terms of just ensuring that employees learn in terms of how to interpret and utilize data insights. Secondly is AI literacy, giving them just the awareness around things such as understanding of AI, learning, machine learning, automation concepts, so the whole workforce can actually have that sort of insights. And then digital collaboration tools, I think those are key, and the ones where we start with where all employees are actually expected to learn through. What are some of the things which strategically, what is that organizations can do in terms of blended learning? Many options, online courses and certification are some which you can encourage your employees. There are some like Coursera, LinkedIn Learning, which are some of the areas where you can learn a lot on AI. In-house training, some even cross-functional training and mentoring and peer learning for those who actually are ahead in the area, just to peer others and bring them to come to their stage. I think I have 3 examples where I would think are good adoption stories, which I've seen. One from my former employer and Unilever. I think Unilever has done a good job in terms of introducing an AI which does initial screening, video interviews, and also candidate assessment. And they've done quite well, and that has actually helped them to reduce hiring time by almost 75%, just using AI. Another area, I think if you've been following American stories, the Bank of America, there's a solution they call Arica, which is a sort of AI-powered virtual assistant, which deals with customer service and even support what you call, give you financial guidance in a way that looks like you're talking to a person, Key, and if you look at what the insurance sector can learn, I think each sector has done it differently. The tech industry, basically rapid adaptation and fluency has helped them to move much quicker. The retail and customer service tend to find that a customer-facing AI and expectations has dealt with them in a quite good way, which makes them move much quicker. I think those are some of the small insights I could pick in terms of learning what you could do, from aligning to the roadmap and focusing on those training around ensuring the workforce is upskilled.
So I have another question, maybe from that perspective. It kind of reminds me of this thing that we had in IT, or we have in IT, called bring your own device. Yes. And I think increasingly we see what I call the bring your own AI, meaning that, I don't know what the policies and situations look that way, but sometimes I feel many organizations are actually a few steps behind their own employees when it comes to the uptake and utilization of some of these tools. And sometimes this is outside some of the policies and procedures that organizations would have, but they're already using this stuff. So what are your thoughts around that? Because as much as there's an organizational approach, but what happens when the individual is doing it on his own initiative and other things they're using, which might fall outside some of these policies and procedures from an HR point of view? Yeah.
You notice from the 9 trends I talked about data, who is the owner of the data. And that boundary actually having disappeared in terms of what is organization data and what is individual data. And it's quite an interesting scenario because most organizations are grappling with that and all the ethical issues around AI and those sort of things, which are some of the things which needs to be confronted. But in reality, that's what has happened, that data is everywhere and anywhere. And the organizations cannot claim to be which one is theirs and what is employees. So it's a tough one, and maybe the tech guys here can be able to tell us what sort of solutions they have, in that
Absolutely.
area. Yeah.
And Charles, actually, you're going to lead us off into our third theme, which is change management and the employee experience. In fact, the employee experience part for me is fantastic in IT, because just because it works doesn't mean the end user actually adopts. Yeah, I think that's what you're basically saying about the mobile app, for instance, that the user is a moving target in terms of their needs and expectations around some of the solutions you deliver. And maybe from that point of view, how can CIOs and IT leaders support HR in creating a seamless AI adoption journey for employees? And also, what technology-driven strategies would work best?
Okay, so I will look at an employee as a customer. I mean, an employee is a customer of HR. And the way you structure an adoption of any new technology or any new policy is you must have a very clear strategy or an adoption roadmap that is, in this case now, employee specific. because these are, the AI agents are like co-workers for the employees. So the employees must understand that these are our co-workers. They must think about the customer, okay? Because any business is in existence to make money. So there's a business case. So you must have a very clear adoption strategy. And the way we do it in technology, and I'll come back to governance because there's a lot of governance that needs to come in here. First of all, understand the strategy. Why are we doing this? And empathize, if I may now talk like a HR person, empathize with your employees and understand where are they coming from and walk with them the journey. The reason why we are implementing or we are doing artificial intelligence is for us to XYZ. This is the bank strategy or this is the insurance strategy, and to try and draw a line between implementing these AI agents and the organization strategy. And in there now you'll have your initiatives, what are the capabilities that are required, and in this, for example, the capabilities, data science, machine learning, the types of trainings that will be in there, the types of tools that you will deploy or bring into the organization, and making them see that these tools or these AI agents that are being developed are actually there to augment their work and not replace their work, but make the organization grow, because it's all about business. What is the business case? So any technology-driven initiative, it follows those things. What's the strategy? What are the aspirations of the business? What are the initiatives that we'll do? What are the pillars? What are the foundational pieces you need to put in place? The types of skills, the types of tools. Will you use Copilot? Will you use Gemini? And if we're using Gemini, for what reason? What kind of training needs to be done for us to use Gemini? What kind of governance do we put in place so that as you do bring your own AI, coming from a banking industry, first of all, it is don't bring anything first, but what we see is you will find it already there. So how do you then deal with that? So I think basically is to empathize with the employee and make them understand that these guys are here to augment you, and this is the strategy of the organization.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, what you're saying is that it's all about alignment.
Alignment, 100%, right from tech, HR, and the business units. And for them to understand, because some of these things will have an impact on not just the people who are traditionally non-tech, but sometimes we think, and the technology people usually think, that technology impacts non-tech people. But clearly, if they're doing 25% of their coding using AI, then it means it's also impacting tech people.
Excellent, thanks so much. And I think that gives us a wonderful segue to Gicheha, where, I think you've talked about, ideally what should happen. But in your instance, I'd like to ask you, what happens when organizations are facing resistance to the adoption of AI, and specifically things like agents? And what are some of the common mistakes companies make when introducing AI into workforce processes?
I think trust is a big one here. We know that this AI is riding on data that we feed into it, and we know very well that especially people data is one that's possibly the most unstructured. And so therefore there's a question of, is it really truly predictive based on who the employees or what the people are saying, or is it purely biased based on the data that has been subjected to it? That's more on the technical angle of it. On the human experience angle on it, if an AI has lied to me and has hallucinated, and I can see it's done that, how am I then expected to trust it, and especially when being adopted into the organization? So I think that's the biggest one, that it almost comes naturally that you want to understand what is this, and the first reaction is, I think I'm not interested. The second angle to it is, as it comes in, you're very sure that it's going to disrupt some of the jobs. And you want to look at, people who are just not really getting the job done, they're okay to paper push, and there are others who want to be high performers. So there is an aspect of, yes, it's going to come in, disrupt, maybe do a better job. It has a much better attention to detail than I am as a human being. And therefore, there's a resistance of, is it going to take my job away? And which is something that we covered on earlier. So, but this is an opportunity to really be able to position AI as an enabler, not as a replacement, such that in as much as it's going to take away what you believe you're good at or what you believe you're employed to do, it can actually, in essence, be able to support you to become a better person, to become a better leader, to be able to learn new skills and be able to actually translate impact into the role. And we have data to show that the net effect of AI is actually as an increment in terms of job creation. We don't know how that looks like. It's a promise. But I think that's one of the premises upon which you can ride on. We are not doing this to get you out of job. We are doing this to become a better business, to become more profitable, to be more optimized, and to ensure that you're fully involved as a human being. But then the other thing is adoption also needs to really start at the top level, at the boards. And then it can come to the executive, it can come to the leaders, and then it can come down to the employees. Research shows that a lot of the employees who use AI are not willing to say that they actually use AI. I wonder how many people here will actually say, yes, I use AI to do my work. We are hiding behind that. Why? Because it's not that policy, it's not fully cascaded down, it's really not clear what role it's having and how it's solving it. But then, also, if you look at the board and the board's composition, how many of them actually have that technical, have that understanding of what AI is and how it impacts the organization? And so therefore, it ends up being something that happens sort of under the hood, and everyone is doing their own thing, everyone is bringing their own AI, and then when you're hit with the litigation, it becomes problematic. And so everyone wants to avoid it, and they want to actually protect themselves. So there's a role for enhancing governance at the top level. The board needs to be fully empowered to be able to question the executive, to be able to put the executive on check, who can then be able to drive the adoption down to the team. What mistakes should you avoid? I think lack of clear vision, you mentioned that, of automation. Do you really need to automate everything? Do you really need to replace all the human roles entirely without considering the human judgment and creativity? The other mistake is ignoring change management, insufficient training, and as we mentioned, ethical oversight. Right now, I think UK is one that has the most comprehensive AI kind of regulation. We don't have that yet, but it can borrow from other related and sister regulations to ensure that we are still playing fair and as per the expectations of the law.
Great. So lastly, I'd like to come to you, George, before we open to questions from the audience. From a governance and leadership standpoint, what strategies can business leaders adopt to ensure that AI-driven workforce changes are both smooth and well accepted?
Yeah, so I see them in three areas. So first, I think fixing the governance framework is important. And all organizations have governance bodies which steer it, from the board to EXCO and etc. And it's good to ensure that the board is involved by ensuring that even at the board level they are discussing AI, probably even having a committee maybe steering it within the board under maybe technology or something would be good. In the EXCO or management committees, which I think most organizations of EXCO have a steering committee also, which is charged with responsibility for monitoring and delivering the AI roadmap. And as you go lower to other workplace level where you have AI champions and some even combined with agile, if possible, to just make sure that the governance is okay and running okay. And also another area is the leaders themselves are pivotal, ensuring that they give the right buy-in and the sponsorship, because people look at what their leaders do. If the leaders look like they're interested to change and they're driving it from the front, then they will also follow that. So that's key. And finally, I think is the area of human-centered change management approach. So really looking at all change management aspects around frequent communication, involving employees, addressing fear and uncertainties which normally come up when you are implementing such issues, celebrating early wins, and building trust among others. I think those are some of the tips probably which we'll give around just ensuring that governance is strengthened and changes are implemented in a much more smoother way.
Well, thank you so much, George. So I think you've heard it from the panel across the three different themes that we discussed. And at this point in time, I'd like to open it up to our audience. If any of you would have any questions for the panel that would be relevant. I see someone here. Do we have a microphone? Well, actually, there are two. After he does, you can come forward as well. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Moses, and good steer, and thank you for the insightful discussions that you've just had. My question is really, Brian is my name, I'm from Safaricom. My question is really around the risk of over-reliance in AI, and this really came up when I interacted with an article that mentioned that co-pilots, ChatGPT, are really affecting critical thinking at work. Basically based on the fact that staff are using the technology, they encounter long-term reliance and diminished independent problem solving. What are your thoughts around that area?
Would like to take this question?
Maybe I could go first. Remember I said the demands of the current demographic are pretty heavy, if I may use that word. And these are guys, these are people who are already using AI in some level. So it doesn't really diminish the cognitive aspects of your employee. It just makes them work at the same level as some of the demands. I mean, that's just what I think. But you're right to some extent. Over-reliance can also create a bit of time on our hands, which can be good for the human being, but maybe not very good for the organization.
I think maybe coming to what he's saying there, I think there's also the question around, is the person losing their sharpness because they're subordinating to it? Maybe that's something you wanted to address as well.
I do not have data. In fact, you're working on that piece because it's a huge topic. So allow me to answer it from my perspective. When I was in high school, we used to use logbooks. And I remember at one time a challenge, why can't I just use a calculator to do this? And my teacher told me, I'm not going to be sharp enough. But how many of us here use logbooks? Right? So if I was to use that as a personal experience, and I'm saying this is personal, right? I have no data to this, then all I'm saying is maybe there's that fear, but if calculators really didn't take our brain power, then how could AI take our brain power as well? If anything, it's going to expound us to be able to think differently and actually be able to deal with problems that are impactful. I usually say that we don't have a limitation of the kind of problems that we can solve. So we don't really have to boil down to we have to save those PDFs. We have got bigger problems that we can apply our brain power to, unless, of course, someone is lazy and therefore they want to be idle. That's my personal opinion.
But some would say merely using the AI suggests that you're lazy, right? But then, George, I'm sure you have an opinion on this one.
Not much. I think in our sector is even more dangerous because we work for clients and people expect that they are hiring people who are thinking to solve their problems, not an AI to solve their problem. So we're always very careful around the reports which goes out and proposal just to ensure that we read it, we see the human element in it, into that. But it's quite unavoidable because I think where we find AI being useful is on analytics, some of these things which probably would give you insights beyond the brain, what brain can think. So as just going back to what I presented earlier, just augmenting the technology with human, ensure that the human beings become better version of themselves, not dunderheads.
But would you also say that when you use AI, and this is something I've noticed myself, that the times you pose a question or a prompt around something you know very little about, and the output you get actually teaches you, or even takes you to a level you never thought possible, because unless you had a brainstorm with 5 other colleagues or something, you would not have been able to achieve that task. I don't know whether you have any thoughts around that, because it just feels to me that augmentation, the ability to do what you could not do before, is really transforming the workforce, isn't it? Would you say?
Yeah. And I think to me, the example I look at is the universities, I think, because it's all about writing and publication, etc. And you can picture a thesis or written by a student or a lecturer, and the lecturer is reading and he's seeing things like really. So it's something which the world has to see. That's the reality of the new. Actually, that's the future of work. And I think getting to think the other way around may be seen as pity in future. And you just need to accept that we get much more better results and outcomes using technology and people, you know.
Okay.
Yeah. Already
Great.
the people we hire are very bright.
Okay. You had a question at the front? Yes. Is the microphone nearby? Also, are there any other people in the room who might have questions? Please raise your hand, and we'll send the mic to you the moment we're done with this one.
So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anne Kaloki. I'm from HealthX Africa. So it's quite a question and a bit of a comment, something which Moses, maybe you said, that hiring and you see someone has done maybe their cover letter or the CV with AI, should it be a red flag? Really wondering of it of being of a controversy, because right now we are talking about how AI is supposed to make things easy for everyone, how we need to learn and relearn for us to understand further. So if an industry gets someone who is able to prompt an AI to actually give those skills you want and outline their CV and what they have, because of course, like we say, Gigo, garbage in, garbage out. This is someone who is able to bring out an highlight, which makes sense. Should that person not actually show you this is the right person we need? Because this is the person who is actually taking us to the next level. And as they use their skills to use their AI, they'll be able to do something else. Thank you.
So I don't know if, gentlemen, you have
That's
comments?
yours. Anyway, she asked direct to you. But you're right. I was actually in an event where someone argued that you need to have the right skills to ask ChatGPT the right questions. So you're already clever. I think two different people asking ChatGPT or whichever whichever generative AI agent, the answers can come out pretty different. And this is just the reality. I mean, we have to continue using these agents. If I may use human mobility, okay? In the early 1900s, I think if you were able to walk from one location to another in, let's say, 3 months, and now you're able to go to that same location in a few minutes, it doesn't mean now that you're using a vehicle, you're a less person than the other guy. You're just doing, you're using the car to be more efficient. So yeah, you can use AI to generate your CV. We will see it, but how you use it also will show the kind of person you are.
I think for me, where I was coming from, I think comes back to the issue of how you prompted it. If I could not discern that you had used an AI, then I would think you're pretty genius if you did it well. But the fact that I can see that you used AI in words that seem to be endemic to ChatGPT when it does that means that perhaps you're not putting in enough effort to make sure that it doesn't show that it came through AI. Because certain words and phrases you start to notice seem to be typical of a regular response. But I think a more thoughtful prompt may have elicited a more natural sounding CV that sounds more like you, if you see what I'm saying. So I'd say that, yeah, for me it's just a concern because I can immediately see it and say, well, maybe you didn't put enough time in the manner that you prompted it.
Fast prompt.
Yeah, exactly. And that's another thing. I think that the way that you prompt the AI is really a key driver behind the outcome that you get.
Yeah, maybe just also to add up, we talked about the example of Unilever, the one they have done on. But you see, even me with my whole experience I have in HR, AI can do everything. But the last process of hiring will be brick and mortar. I have to see this person. Because there are some situations whereby you've gone through the whole of that process only to meet the person and you get very disappointed. Not knowing that actually even the chats you are having with them on WhatsApp were actually AI responded, and the guy cannot even completely communicate. Yeah, so the augmenting of the process is key, and you will use it up to a certain extent, but there are some places where human judgment would also be applied. Yeah, but it's part of the evolution I talked about. I think after another 10, 15 years, it will not be an issue, what you're talking about. People will see as normal. You'll see as normal. They will not say you are not clever and this is not you. People will just see as normal and they'll move on. Yeah.
Definitely no one in HR is going to sit down and look at those applications. most of the conversations that I've also had with the young people, they're asking me, Ian, I sent 100 applications per week, and I've never been called for an interview. Definitely there's an AI that is checking this in the background. What do they need to tweak probably on their profile? Is that a headliner that needs to be there for them to be called for an interview? What are those machines really looking for? Because you get a big majority of young people have big applications of LinkedIn, not even the young people, everyone basically, but being shortlisted becomes a bit of a stretch. So what are the machines definitely looking at? George, have been on the panel.
Most of the recruitment systems are front and the back end. The back end is basically a criteria for which the recruiter can describe what they want. Okay? So in the past, it will be much easier because it will focus on the hard skills, which is, does this person have this, blah, 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 you know what. But the current systems are even more intelligent because they can even, you can extract the competencies and it reads through the CVs and says this one person has based on what you have described. In the past, the system you couldn't because you had to put a hard skills. You couldn't say ability to, how will you get that from a CV? But nowadays, even those ones, the way you read your CV, it can make some judgment. I understand myself, in LinkedIn, there is a platform which can help you to make your CV being able to get through that firewall into the other side. But in reality, with these high numbers of applications which we get, like I know in Deloitte when we do the annual graduate recruitment, we get almost 10,000 applications. And you can picture, we're only going to take 70. And an employer who takes 70 per year is a very good employer in Kenya. That's a very high number is employee. And that process of cutting goes through some of these things. But at times, the recruiter also, you want I actually read the applications which went through and the applications particularly which come to me which are borderline. You're told this one, so I try to find out why. Because my client will ask you, why was this? If let's say recruitment is not one, maybe like a CEO recruitment, you tend to have maybe between 50 and 100 applications. I try to read even the ones which did not go through, just to understand why. They may have passed through AI, but sometimes I just want to see. But most of the time, you tend to see that 70 to 80% of the time, the AI was correct. 30%, you can find a candidate, maybe he just missed. But there are many school of thoughts of people who, claim that they can tweak a LinkedIn through some training they do to be able to do that. Maybe you can comment on that.
You can see me on the side at Afi, but you're absolutely correct. So there's two sides to it. The state of employment, as we know, there are no jobs, right? So that says, AI or without AI, if all of us apply for a job, we possibly have an opening for one person. So that's the first reality. Then you bring in AI, and most people have interacted with an applicant tracking system, right? Where you just submit your CV, and you don't really need to do anything. It has taken your name, your email address, all you need to do is click and submit. So yes, there's AI, but the role for the AI is really to help the recruiter to be much more precise and be very, very structured in terms of where they're spending their time, knowing very well that they want to get the best out of the best, and even amongst the top 3, top 5, 1 or 4 actually will not get that job because it's only for one person. So, but as I say, there's some ethical guidelines, and this is why I wouldn't really, just like George, believe in this school of thought that says you can tweak your CV to get that job. Because one, have you really scrutinized that job application to understand what it means? Do you really know what they're looking for? Are you applying it for the sake of hitting your numbers because a motivational speaker told you should be applying 10 jobs a day? Is it really something that fits you? And if you're to scrutinize, would you actually qualify yourself for that role is on the other end? But secondly, we failed in recruitment. You had the issue of AI those days at Amazon where actually it was discriminating against certain people of color and such like stuff and favoring white males. And that really has gone to enhance the role of human being to make an interpretation decision. It's actually a legal requirement. So I think to answer your question will be, it's good to tweak your CV so that it speaks to it, but not to cheat the system.
Great. Hope that answers your question.
100%.
To me, it almost sounded a bit like the Hunger Games, yeah? Yeah, that's how it's going with their job applications.
So true.
So I think we'll bring our panel to a close, and I'd like to get your last remarks. And the question I think I'd like to ask you all is, if you could give one piece of advice to business leaders preparing for an AI-driven workforce transformation that we're currently in, what would it be? And I'd like to start off with you, Charles.
Yeah, have an AI adoption strategy or roadmap that is customer focused and also employee empathical, if there's a word like that. It's customer focused because, I mean, your customer defines your business, your employees do the work. So the roadmap or the adoption strategy needs to be led by those. I mean, the rest of the things, training, etc., will come through.
Hey, thanks so much. What about you, Gitch?
It's clear that AI is revolutionizing workforce and performance. The success of that hinges on balancing technology and the human nature and values. I'll maybe sort of end it with a quote from John Naisbitt, who said that the most exciting breakthroughs of the 21st century won't be technology, but it will be because of an expanding concept of what it means to be a human.
It sounds very deep. And finally, George?
Yeah, I'll advise that they focus on change management, particularly ensuring that there's a good change management strategy, mapping all the key stakeholders who will be involved through the process, to be able to see how you will engage with all of them, doing readiness assessments, change impact assessments, and just sort of strategies for buying, including workforce training and education. I think those, to me, are the last stroke, because without that, resistance is just going to happen.
Great, thank you so much. I think we've heard it all from them. Please give them a hand. And we appreciate your insights. Thank you, gentlemen, and we'll bring the panel to a close.